A man walks into the desolate hills of Galilee before the sun breaks the horizon. The morning air still biting cold against his skin. He spoke when he was alone, when he was grieving, and when he was dying. The transactional model shatters completely. He prays for a unity so absolute, so entirely unnatural, that the watching world would have no choice but to believe the Father sent the Son. He is not asking for his followers to be comfortable. He is asking for them to be undeniably bound together. The cross was not a tragedy he was trying to avoid. It was a doorway he was preparing to open. But the detail that changes everything is what happens when we hold that ancient, outward-facing prayer up against the way most of us close our eyes today. Think about the exact words you use when you close your eyes right now. If you are honest about the prayers you whisper, with your hands gripping the steering wheel on your morning commute, or the silent pleas you cycle through while staring at the blue glow of a phone screen at 2 in the morning, a jarring contrast emerges. You are likely exhausted. You carry a physical tightness in your chest that never quite dissipates. A low-grade hum of anxiety about the variables in your life that are spiraling completely out of your grasp. So you use prayer as a crisis management tool. You present God with a highly curated list of preferred outcomes. You detail the exact medical test results you want to see, the specific financial crisis you need him to avert, and the precise trajectory you want for your family. The question is not just how Jesus prayed. The question is what he was actually doing when he closed his eyes. Prayer is not a transaction. You treat prayer as a negotiation, hoping that if you can just articulate the need with enough earnestness, the creator of the universe will act as a cosmic assistant and alter the timeline to your exact specifications. Our modern petition is not a surrender to the divine will. It is a desperate attempt to maintain our own. We try to pray away the wilderness. We ask to be rescued from the very silence, the very friction, and the very vulnerability that Jesus intentionally walked into. When the pressure builds, your instinct is to ask for an immediate extraction. You want the pain removed. You want the conflict resolved. You want the heavy, suffocating weight of the unknown lifted off your shoulders before morning. You have been subtly taught that if your faith is strong enough, the mountain will move. But what happens when the mountain stays exactly where it is? What happens when the sickness does not heal? When the relationship fractures permanently? When the bank account drains into nothing? If your entire theology of prayer is built on God rearranging your reality to suit your comfort, your faith will shatter the moment he says no. You will feel abandoned, entirely unaware that you have simply been practicing the wrong rhythm. Jesus never promised that the prayer of alignment would result in an immediate extraction. He demonstrated that the purpose of the connection is not to change the circumstances around you, but to anchor the soul within you. It is a relocation. We are a species exhausted by our own autonomy. We carry the weight of our futures, our families, and our failures. He did not pray to bypass the suffering. He prayed to ensure that the suffering would not sever his tether to the Father. This reveals a devastating truth about the way you and I often approach God. We desperately want the unshakable peace of Jesus, but we entirely refuse the surrendered posture of Jesus. We want the quiet confidence he carried, but we spend all our energy trying to negotiate our way out of the thorns. And that negotiation ultimately fails when the worst-case scenario actually arrives. Because the final proof of how this tether holds is not found in the quiet of a garden. It is found on the splintered wood of a Roman execution stake. The sun goes dark at noon. The air grows thick and unnaturally cold. Iron pierces flesh. Rough wood scrapes against a torn back. A body hangs suspended between heaven and dirt. Lungs collapse under their own crushing weight. To speak, he must push his torn feet against the spike. He must drag his raw shoulders up the timber. He pulls a single, agonizing breath into his chest. And he speaks. He does not scream in blind panic. He does not curse the Roman soldiers rolling dice in the dirt beneath his feet. He does not demand vengeance on the religious elite mocking him from the road. He prays. Action. Retreat. Miracle. Retreat. Agony. retreat, constantly trying to manage outcomes we cannot control. And Jesus steps into that exact human condition, carrying the weight of cosmic redemption. Even here, pinned to the wood, the instinct holds. The tether holds. First, he prays for his executioners. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Then, the sky turns black. The crushing, suffocating weight of human rebellion settles onto his physical frame. He screams, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? Most people assume this is the moment the tether breaks. They assume the sheer terror of the pain finally shattered his theology. But look closer at the words. He is not just screaming randomly into the dark. He is quoting David. He is reciting the exact opening line of Psalm 22, a psalm that begins in absolute blood-soaked agony and ends with the declaration that the Lord has not despised the suffering of the afflicted. Even as his lungs fill with fluid, even as the Father turns his face away, his mind is anchored strictly to the text. The cry of abandonment is not a loss of faith. It is the ultimate act of alignment. He is intentionally locating his suffering inside the sovereign story of God. Then comes the final breath. He does not just expire. He does not simply bleed out into the dust. He hands his life back to the one who sent him. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Another quote. Psalm kolmekumentauxi. He breathes in. He speaks the words. He breathes out. Yet he never once looks panicked. He never looks hurried. He was not leaving us a polite religious script to recite before dinner. His chest stops moving. The temple veil tears. The earth shakes violently. The transactional model of prayer dies right there on the timber. The idea that God will always rescue you from the fire, if you use the right words, burns to the ground. God did not rescue his own son from the nails. He sustained him completely through them. But the words spoken on that Roman cross are not his final intercession. The story does not stop at the empty tomb. It ascends. And the terrifying, beautiful reality of this pattern is what he is doing right now. The writer of Hebrews makes a startling claim about the current occupation of the resurrected Christ. If you turn to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 25, the author states that Jesus is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives to intercede for them. The Apostle Paul echoes this exact same reality in his letter to the Roman Church, declaring that Christ Jesus, who was raised to life, is currently at the right hand of God, continually interceding for us. We tend to view the ascension as the end of the narrative, assuming Jesus finished his agonizing work and sat down to simply observe the unfolding chaos of human history from a safe distance. We imagine him resting, finally insulated from the grinding friction and the bitter cold of the world he left behind. The ascension was not a retirement. He was diagnosing our exhaustion. He was demonstrating a literal mechanism of survival. He was showing a fracturing, anxious humanity, how a person maintains an unbroken. It was a relocation of the priesthood. The Greek word used by both Paul and the writer of Hebrews for intercession is entikano. It is a remarkable, heavy verb. It does not simply mean to ask a polite favor from a distance. In the ancient world, it originally carried the idea of encountering someone, of coming together to converse, of stepping directly into the presence of a sovereign, to make an intimate petition on behalf of another. It requires a deeply relational proximity. Picture a throne room completely devoid of time. The air is heavy with the scent of incense, and the space does not hold a detached, indifferent deity. It holds a high priest, who still bears the physical, uneven texture of Roman iron in his wrists. The scars were not erased in the resurrection. They are the eternal currency of his intercession. He is doing right now exactly what he did in the desolate hills of Galilee and in the crushing darkness of the olive grove. He is praying, but he is no longer pleading from the dirt of the earth. He is advocating from the throne of heaven. His current intercession is not a desperate negotiation with an angry judge. It is the steady, unshakable presentation of a finished work. When your own prayers fracture, when the panic rises in your throat, tether to the divine while walking through a world designed to crush them. To feel the weight of this pattern, you have to bypass the parables, and you cannot formulate a coherent sentence because the physical weight of grief is pressing down on your chest like a stone. You are not left to your own inadequate articulation. He takes the fractured, tear-soaked whispers of a broken humanity and translates them through the perfection of his own unbroken tether. But this continuous, heavenly intercession changes the entire landscape of your daily life. It forces you to look at your own hands, your own anxieties, and the way you approach the silence of God when your own sky goes dark. Because the way you speak to the Father when the diagnosis finally arrives, or when the money entirely runs out, reveals exactly who you believe is sitting in that room. He walked into the barren hills of Galilee and demonstrated a proximity that silenced the chaos. He sat on a grassy hillside and gave his friends a blueprint for daily survival. He collapsed in the dirt of Gethsemane and surrendered his own will to an agonizing cross. He stood under the ancient stars and prayed for a unity that would cross centuries to reach you. He hung suspended on Roman timber and aligned his suffering with the ancient texts. He breathed his last, shattered breath and handed his spirit back to the one who sent him. He ascended to a throne room outside of time and is pleading your case right now. Same proximity, same tether, but maybe the part. He told about prayer. And look closely at the moments when he actually dropped to the ground. You have to look at the rhythm of, "That stays with me most," is the word spoken in the dirt. Abba, not a formal title shouted from a polished temple floor, but a child's cry, whispered by a man whose capillaries were bursting into the soil of an olive grove. A man terrified of the physical agony waiting for him, but utterly certain of the Father's face. If you are in a season where the pressure is breaking, where the diagnosis is terrifying, or where God feels like a distant monarch rather than a father, you do not need to negotiate an extraction. You do not need to manufacture a flawless theological argument just to earn your daily bread. You only need to position your face. The tether holds. The priest is still speaking your name. If this opens something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted from trying to pray their way out of the wilderness. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who has never once looked away from the suffering of his Son walk with you through to your own dark olive groves and give you the grace to simply ask for today's bread. His retreats, the ancient language he used in his deepest agony, and the final breath he released on a cross. And the place to start is not inside a temple. It is in the absolute, quiet emptiness of the wilderness. A teacher stands in the middle of a hungry crowd, tearing coarse barley bread until his hands are coated in dust and crumbs. There is a single verse in Luke's Gospel that explains the rhythm of his entire life. Luke chapter 5, verse 16. The setting is chaotic. The sick are being dragged through the dust. The crowds are surging forward, desperate for healing, desperate for a king to overthrow Rome. The noise is deafening, and the human demand is endless. And Luke records a strange habit, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. The word your English Bible translates as prayed in that verse is the Greek proseuchomai. It appears 85 times in the New Testament. It is a compound word, built from the root eukomai, meaning to wish or to declare, and combined with the prefix pros. And that prefix changes the entire physics of the word. Pros means motion toward. It implies facing. It dictates face-to-face proximity. It is the exact same Greek prefix the Apostle John uses in the very first verse of his Gospel to describe the Word being with God in the beginning. Face-to-face, intimate, unobstructed. That root changes everything. Prayer is not throwing words at a distant sky. It is positioning the face. Watch the rhythm. Look closely at the timeline of his ministry. He heals a man covered in leprosy. He withdraws. He chooses 12 flawed men to carry his message. He withdraws. He feeds 5,000 people on a grassy hillside. He withdraws. A prisoner kneels in a shadowed olive grove at midnight. The smell of crushed olives, mingling with the salt of sweat falling into the dirt, he hears the devastating news that his cousin John has been beheaded. He withdraws. Action. Retreat. Miracle. Retreat. Success. Retreat. Grief. Retreat. Every time the pressure builds. Every time the crowd swells. Every time the religious leaders sharpen their arguments and pick up their stones, he breaks away. The wilderness was not an escape from his mission. It was the engine of his mission. He walks away from the clutching hands and the burning heat of public expectation. He steps out into the silence, where the only sound is dry wind, moving over barren rock, the smell of crushed sage in the hills, the feeling of rough basalt rock under his knees, the sudden, sweeping cold of the desert night. There, in the dirt, he aligns his face with the Father. He refuses to let the noise of human demand drown out the voice of divine approval. His solitude is not a random habit. It is a fiercely guarded boundary. He is showing a frantic, overwhelmed humanity that you cannot pour out what you have not gathered in. He lived this face-to-face proximity in the desert, but he did not leave us guessing about what actually happened in the quiet. Because when his closest friends finally cornered him and asked him how to do this, he didn't give them a theology lesson. He gave them a blueprint. He sits on a Galilean hillside. The tall grass bends in the damp breeze blowing off the Sea of Kinneret. A condemned man hangs on rough Roman timber, his lungs slowly collapsing as he forces his chest upward to speak one final sentence. The crowd sitting around him is composed of day laborers, heavily taxed fishermen, and exhausted mothers pulling rough wool cloaks tight around their shoulders. They know exactly how the religious elite pray standing on stone street corners, shouting long, intricate, multi-syllable petitions to prove their righteousness and their theological pedigree. The disciples lean in. They want the secret. They want the formula that gives him this terrifying, unshakable peace. And Jesus opens his mouth and gives them less than 70 words. He completely bypasses the formal, bureaucratic language of the temple system. He does not address a distant monarch or a volatile judge. He addresses a father. He begins with alignment, recognizing the sheer, terrifying holiness of God before a single personal request is made on the earth. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. This is the anchor. He is teaching them to surrender the outcome before they even articulate the need. Then he shifts to the physical, grinding reality of human survival. Give us today our daily bread. Notice exactly what is missing from that sentence. He does not tell them to ask for a granary full of wheat. He does not tell them to ask for a 5-year economic plan or absolute security against the Roman occupation. He tells them to ask for the exact amount of calories required to survive the next 24 hours. Different moments, different landscapes, different weights of agony. But in every single one of these moments, the man is doing the exact same thing. It is the echo of the wilderness. It is the manna falling in the desert. Gather only what you need for today, because if you try to hoard it for tomorrow, it will rot in your hands. He is not giving them a magic incantation. He is giving them an orientation. He is training their minds to stop living in the phantom timeline of tomorrow. When you ask for daily bread, you are forced to acknowledge your own fragility. You are forced to admit that you do not hold the universe together by the sheer force of your own anxiety. You eat the bread. You taste the coarse grain on your tongue. You feel the immediate warmth in your stomach. And then, you wake up the next morning and you have to trust him all over again. The daily bread is not just physical sustenance. It is the rhythm of continuous reliance. He gives them this blueprint on a sunny hillside while the crowds are cheering and the ministry is thriving. It is easy to say your will be done when the wind is at your back and the fish are multiplying in your hands. But a few years later, the sun goes down. The crowds vanish. The religious leaders stop plotting and start marching with torches and swords. He is praying. If you grew up around the church, you have heard 1,000 sermons on prayer. Most people assume prayer is fundamentally a transaction, and the blueprint he handed them in the light is about to be violently tested in the darkest grove of olive trees in Jerusalem. The real test of a theology of prayer is not what it produces in the light. It is what it can withstand in the dark. When we analyze the accounts of his final night, we are forced to confront the limits of transactional religion. Mark chapter 14. Verse 36. Jesus is crushed against the ground in the Garden of Gethsemane. The physiological stress is so extreme that his capillaries are literally bursting under the psychological weight of what is coming. Mixing blood with sweat in the cold dirt. He is completely alone. He knows the cross is only hours away, and he speaks. He says, "Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me." The word Mark records here is the Aramaic Abba. It appears only 3 times in the entire New Testament, and its cultural weight is staggering. It is not a formal, bureaucratic title for a deity. It is the intimate, foundational term a Middle Eastern child uses for their father. It carries the weight of absolute vulnerability, safety, and dependence. It is the language of the living room, not the language of the temple. In the entire history of Jewish literature up to that moment, there is no record of anyone addressing the creator of the cosmos. You bring the creator of the universe a list of needs. You present your anxieties. You ask for intervention, and you hope for a favorable response. With this specific, scandalous intimacy. And it is the exact same word the Apostle Paul will later use in Romans 8:15, when he tells the early Roman church that they did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but a spirit of adoption, by whom we cry, "Abba, Father." That single Aramaic word changes everything. In his moment of supreme terror, Jesus does not retreat into religious formalism. He does not barter his good deeds for a rescue operation. He leans into the proximity of a son. If the idea of stripping away your formal religious language to find something this intimate is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the son remains in the dirt. He feels the terror. He verbally names his very real human desire to escape the physical agony that is waiting for him, but he anchors all of that fear to the exact same blueprint he taught his disciples on the sunlit hillside years earlier. Yet not what I will, but what you will. The prayer in Gethsemane is not a negotiation for a better outcome. We treat it like a divine consultation. We treat it as an emergency pull cord. But if you look closer, if you strip away 2,000 years, it is a surrender to a higher purpose. He does not ask God to change the reality of the situation. He aligns himself with the will of the Father, even when that will leads directly to the wood and the nails. But before the Roman soldiers arrive, with their torches, before the betrayal is finalized with a kiss in the dark, Jesus prays one more time in that garden. And if you look closely at John's account of that night, you realize he is no longer just praying for himself. The meal is over. The unleavened bread is broken. The cup of wine is swallowed. And the betrayer has already slipped out into the dark streets of Jerusalem. Jesus walks out into the cold night air. Before he crosses the Kidron Valley, before the crushing weight of the olive grove, he stops. He lifts his eyes. John chapter 17 records the longest continuous prayer of Jesus in the entire biblical text. Most people assume a condemned man's final words will be entirely consumed by his own survival. When the shadow of execution falls, human instinct turns violently inward. But Jesus does something that defies biology. He does not pray for a legion of angels to pull him out of the timeline. He prays for the men standing nervously behind him, of religious habit, and look exclusively at the recorded prayers of Jesus of Nazareth. A startling pattern emerges. When you read the exact words, he prays for the fisherman who will curse his name before sunrise. He prays for the tax collector who will eventually write this narrative down. He prays for the zealot who will carry his message to the edges of the Roman Empire. He prays for their protection. knowing exactly the kind of violence the world is about to unleash on them. But this prayer is not a defensive strategy. It is a cosmic transfer of authority. Listen to the rhythm of his words in the dark. He asks the Father to protect them by the power of his name. He asks that they may have the full measure of his joy within them. He asks that they may be sanctified by the truth. And then, standing under the ancient stars of the first century, he does something staggering. He sees beyond the olive trees. He sees beyond the Roman occupation. He prays for you. My prayer is not for them alone. He says, I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. Centuries before you were born, hours before his hands were pierced, you were on his mind. He asks the Father that the future believers, the unbroken chain of humanity that will inherit this kingdom, would be one.